Thank you. The Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I rise in support of the Shadow Treasurer's motion on cost of living. There was an opportunity here, Mr Speaker. This budget should have been a defining moment. There was a genuine chance to turn record revenues into meaningful outcomes for families, for communities, for small business and for the most disadvantaged, the most vulnerable West Australians right across the state. The Premier said before this election, everyone in this House is well aware, they appeared on most of the paraphernalia that went out, that cost of living would be his top priority. We heard it once, we heard it 100,000 times. His number one priority. It was repeated and repeated and repeated. It was a commitment that was communicated to all West Australians. But after the budget last week, the Premier and the government are now trying to say that they are delivering on their promise through targeted relief. I'll remind everybody in this House, shall I, that power is up, water is up, car registration is up, the emergency services levy is up. But nowhere in the election material was there mention of targeted relief for some. It was an overarching commitment. Mr Speaker, it wasn't just in the free media and in print advertising that the Premier's commitment was promoted. WA Labor spent $284,586 running ads from the Premier's Facebook page and Instagram pages featuring local Labor candidates, which repeated the Premier's claim that cost of living would be Labor's top priority. And WA Labor spent $346,650 on YouTube and Google, which featured that same commitment. It didn't say targeted cost of living measures. There was no asterisks on any of these ads that it would apply only to some people and not to all. They advertised this commitment by the Premier to all West Australians. I hear some joviality in the House. Perhaps some reminders might be useful. Here is the Premier's Facebook page. An ad on Facebook, doubled up also on Instagram, and it says, next to the member for Brewer Lake, our government's number one priority is easing cost of living, like with power bill rebates. What power bill rebates? What power bill rebates? There were no power bill rebates, yet there it was on the Facebook and Instagram ads that went over and over and over again. This one on YouTube, the Premier has found his way into somebody's kitchen, sitting down with a friendly couple. They've got the paperwork out. It looks like they're showing him a power bill. Yes. The Premier's probably replying, well, don't worry, there'll be a power bill credit for you. But guess what? No power bill credit. This ad ran over and over and over again. What about this one, a Google ad? rogercook.com.au. Went on there a couple of times during the election myself. Didn't stay on, not much there to keep me. Roger Cook and Labor helping with cost of living is the banner. And even Dr Jag's got to go, everybody. Even Dr Jag's. Vote Labor in Riverton, said Dr Jag's, delivering cost.
There's a point of order, Leader. Please take your seat.
As the Leader Opposition well knows, you both refer to members in this House by their seat, not by their names.
Yes, you are correct. I shall uphold that point of order. Member, you are meant to refer to people by their seats.
OK, fair enough. So Vote Labor in Riverton, despite his name being there, and that's what I was reading, I will now call him Dr Jags Krishnan, the member for Riverton.
No, you don't need the first bit. It's just member for Riverton. OK,
but I'm reading his name off this. So, and he says on his paraphernalia, power bill relief. More, ladies and gentlemen, more. You might all remember this ad. Remember this one? Remember this one? Cost of living support was the headline. There it was, larger than life, and circled, tackling Cost of living was our #1 priority during the election. It highlights a number of things, and then down the bottom here, members, it says $150 household electricity credit. Yeah. Household electricity credit, $150. Whose is that?
Commonwealth government.
The federal government's, not the state Labor governments, yet there it was, promised. And that is not what was delivered in this budget. As the Shadow Treasurer highlighted in her contribution, with more to come, it is alarming how far the Treasurer and the government will go to try to deceive the public on the impact of their increases to fees and charges in this year's budget. You've heard me, you've heard others. Water up, power up, ESL up, and for the first time in Western Australia's history, the cost of putting a motor vehicle on the road over $1,000, all of them up. Now, another example of the WA Labor government's explanations for what they have explained, the $150 household electricity credit, we've already said it did not belong to them. And the Premier or the Treasurer have shown in the budget papers, and I asked, the Treasurer is here, the Premier is, I understand, on his way on that important trip, but Treasurer, I ask you, can you show us in the budget papers where is the state's $150 electricity credit? In which volume? On what page? What line? You said there, this is Labor's advertising. Here it is. It says, this was out on budget day, cost of living support. Tackling the cost of living was our #1 priority during the election. And down the bottom, there it is, $150 household electricity credit. So I asked, what page? What line item? Where will we find that $150 credit in the budget? As the Shadow Treasurer has highlighted with her contribution and others, we know it's not there. They're claiming that a federal government electricity credit is part of the state budget. That's unbelievable. That's not honest. It's disingenuous. It's not right. The cost of living relief so desperately needed by many West Australians has not materialised. And despite the Premier saying it was his #1 priority, members, you heard it, we all heard it, over and over and over again. My #1 priority is tackling the cost of living. You heard it over and over and over again. Despite that, the Premier, households need to find another $382 to cover fees and charges. There's a further 2.5% increase in energy and water charges and a 5% increase in the emergency services levy. And as we've said, the cost of getting your motor vehicle on the road is now over $1,000 for the very first time. That's one car in one household. Many households have multiple cars. The member for Coburn may have seen an article in the West on budget day. A family in his electorate were interviewed who didn't have a lot of good things to say about the budget. Families of young children have been given little to cheer about in the state budget, with some disappointed over a lack of cost of living relief. And highlighted in this article are Stephanie and Mendel Koo Rees with their son. They go on to say, we thought, yep, we're just going to, in reference to the challenges of the cost of living crisis, they said, we're hopeful that we will do better, but then very disappointed when an extra $400 is on top of their bills. In relation to the house, the unit that they have purchased, they said, we thought, yep, we're just going to live here for a little bit and then get married, buy our family home and have more space to have a family because it's just a little unit. And then the families say, quoted in the West Australian, on budget day or just after, but because of the cost of living, that never happened. We can't really afford to move into a bigger place. These are real families in real communities who are telling all of us that the cost of living relief that they were led to believe was coming from the Premier, from the Treasurer, from members opposite, has not arrived. And there was more. Upon confirmation of the power bill rebate would not be making a return, Ms Koo Rees said she was disappointed, quote unquote, in the article there. She said also in relation to healthcare with a young family, we can see firsthand the pressure the healthcare system has been under. Ms Coorey said because of Ollie's health situations, she still wanted to see more help for the health sector. But the main challenge was the GP costs and the difficulties getting in to see and to afford the specialists' bills. Mr Speaker, we find out today that the government has cut kids sport vouchers. These vouchers help struggling families with the cost of fees, with equipment costs and uniforms. And this will mean that some parents may not actually be able to afford for their children to participate in sport. And that means they miss out when their friends get the opportunity to play sport. As the member for Corrine raised to everyone's attention on Saturday, the heartless actions of this government also cut VAC swim assistance. And Talia Jeffrey is another family member and another mother who was quoted by the West Australian, this time in regards to this specific cut. This was on Saturday the 21st of June. And the family quoted in this newspaper in relation to the VAC swim entry fee cut have made the following comments. She fears now that she'll have to pay $150 in entry fees for her kids to undergo swimming lessons. Free venue entry for kids taking VAC swimming lessons were extended last summer following a spate of child drowning and near-drowning incidents in 2024. But the $960,000 initiative was cut from the budget, with no new funding allocated to keep the program going. So $150 in entry fees for that family alone. And that situation is replicated out of this budget right around our community. This budget has meant West Australians have less, not more. The impact on the most vulnerable, the very people we continually hear Labor champions, is devastating. Our most vulnerable have been let down. I don't expect the Premier or his government will necessarily care about the broken commitment to West Australians, despite the fact that in all of this paraphernalia, all of this pre-election material, and in fact even on the budget day, there was direct attributions to things that were not there. I'm not certain that the Premier and the government will necessarily care about that broken commitment. After all, you have to look only at the member for Fremantle's comments on the weekend. And I genuinely was shocked and surprised. I was shocked and surprised by those comments. And you don't really have to look much further to understand the dismissive, disconnected and disingenuous approach of this Labor government when a Labor MP who sits around the cabinet table when asked about VAC swim and the impact on families who could no longer afford it, the member for Fremantle said the beach was for free all of the time. Mr Speaker, need I say any more?